Welcome to Golf in the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, joined by my friend and colleague Connor Evers. Connor, I am pretty excited for today's episode because not only does it take us to one of my favorite cities in the world, but also because we're going to cover a topic that is the number one source of questions that we receive each and every day, and that is tee times at the Old Course at St. Andrews.
Definitely, DJ. Thanks so much for the introduction there, and looking forward to chatting about St. Andrews and the Old Course. Also, one of my favorite places in the world. It's a very cool town, and obviously a lot of our groups will want to go and play the Old Course. And today we're going to talk about the four different ways of playing the Old Course. Sometimes there's a little bit of confusion. It's not as easy as just calling the golf shop and making a tee time there, or going online and making one as well. There's a lot of different ways that go into it. And kind of the goal of this is just to kind of clear that up and give kind of a clear framework of how that works. But DJ, if you don't mind going through kind of the four different ways of playing it, and then we'll eventually go through each way and kind of the different options that go through each one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing to note is that the Old Course at St. Andrews is a fully public golf course. It's owned by the local townspeople. And throughout the episode, you'll hear us refer to the Links Trust. And that is essentially the organization that is charged really through an act of parliament, believe it or not, to manage the courses on behalf of the local citizens. And so for the most part, there are essentially four ways to land a tee time at the Old Course at St. Andrews. You can book a guaranteed tee time through an authorized provider, such as Haversham and Baker. You can enter the daily ballot or apply for a tee time through the Links Trust. And then if all else fails, you can enter the singles queue. Now, as Connor said, we're going to kind of cover each of these in a little more detail because they kind of each have their own set of rules and nuances and so forth that go along with them. But Connor, why don't you kind of lead us off with the one that we, deal with each and every day, and that is the guaranteed tee time route.
Yeah, absolutely. So the guaranteed route is definitely one that there's the biggest demand for. Everyone wants to have it and know that you have a tee time before traveling across the pond for your expedition. But we're, like as DJ said, we're very fortunate enough to be an authorized provider through the St. Andrews Links Trust and receive these guaranteed tee times on the Old Course. And how it works is we receive a very limited number of these times each year. They're actually we're available and get these in about April timeframe of the year before. So we're recording this podcast in early March of 2023, and in the coming weeks coming up, we'll actually receive our allotment of tee times for play in 2024. And each year, we also don't know exactly how many we will receive. So it is a big question mark of how many we will receive, and also how many we will receive each month. So, we're going to go through also, a little bit of kind of the scheduling and timing of when you're wanting to plan an expedition. But essentially the groups that want a guaranteed time, that are also the most flexible, because if a group comes to us and says, hey, we're trying to play the Old Course, a few others in, the second or third week of July, you have specific dates of when you want to travel, it potentially could work out, but more than likely it may not, just due to the fact that, again, we don't know how many we will receive in total, and we also don't know how many we will receive each month. So it varies each year. Again, and a lot of things that go into that factor into that is also what's going on the Old Course. For example, this year, the Walker Cup's there in 2023. Last year, the Open Championship was there. And then in 2024, the AIG Women's Open is there. So we also plan off of that, and the amount of tee times that we receive, again, in total and on a per month basis, varies every year, again, depending on what's going on. Through the guarantee time as well, which is really nice, is you're also able to play one of the other Links Trust golf courses. So there's actually a few other different golf courses within the St. Andrews Links Trust, not just only the old. So the new Castle, Jubilee, Eating Course, there's a few others as well that you can play. And that's included in kind of your time there for a guaranteed route as well. like I said, I can't state it enough. The groups that have tons of flexibility are usually the most successful in getting a time, just because, again, kind of what I said with, not knowing how many times we'll receive and in what month. If group comes to us and say, hey, we've got 8 people ready to go, and we've got availability in all of May, June, July, August, and what have you, that is music to our ears, because then we can really sort through that and help you out. So that's kind of how the guaranteed route goes for us, specifically with H&B.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it vitally important, to be flexible, but also you touched on the time frame. Planning early just really can't be overstated here because, as you said, we receive our tea times in April, but those tea times, quite frankly, are sold the moment they arrive. So if you come to us on April 1st and say, "Hey, we want to play the old course next year," in all likelihood, we're going to be telling you you need to be looking at 2025 because the line is already significantly longer than the number of tee times that we would expect to receive in a year. So, ideally, you would want to start planning this in January of the year before the trip. And that means that you're really going to want to have things in a row as far as who's going, how many are going, what time of year you're hoping for. You're going to want to have that ironed out even before that. So flexibility and planning early is key to land yourself one of the guaranteed times. But the second option, as far as scoring a tee time, believe it or not, actually provides the greatest number of times available. Roughly half of the tee times are awarded via what's called the daily ballot. The daily ballot is essentially a lottery. It requires a minimum of 2 golfers, and you enter 2 days prior to the day you're hoping to play. So, for example, if you're wanting to play on Friday, you're going to enter on Wednesday. The ballot closes at 2 p.m., so you enter before 2 o'clock. You can do that either via the St. Andrews website. You can stop into one of the clubhouses and put your name in the ballot. If you're traveling with H&B, your driver host can assist with this as well. But those results come out right after 2 o'clock. And then you'll know, okay, in a couple days, we're playing the old or we're not. And so, the ballot is a great option for hopefully scoring a time. But as with anything, supply and demand comes into play here, right? And if, even though it provides the greatest number of times, if there's 36 slots on the tee sheet that day and 150 people have entered, the odds may not be in your favor. So it really helps to be strategic about your ballot if this is the direction you're going to go. Traveling in off season months like April can be really helpful. There's fewer people in St. Andrews and your odds go up. Giving yourself more days to enter. As Connor said, flexibility is key on the guaranteed route. Well, what's really key with the ballot is give yourself as many chances to enter as possible. If you go to St. Andrews and enter 8 golfers one time, if you hit the ballot with that, you probably should also play the Powerball because it's probably not going to happen. As a perfect example, one of the PGA professionals who travels with us every year, he was in St. Andrews last year. He entered 10 straight days and didn't hit the ballot once. The last time I entered the ballot, it took 3 tries. Connor got lucky on his visit back in October. We'll get into that in a minute. But the point being, if you want to play the old, base yourself in St. Andrews for several days or even for the full week and enter every day. And at that point, the odds definitely start to shift in your favor. But the other thing to note is that there is no secret formula. We might be able to steer you to some times, the right day or time of year, what have you, that may have some better chances, but there's no secret formula. And golf travel companies cannot sway the ballot. If you're working with a company that leads you to believe otherwise, I would cast a skeptical eye to that claim. But all in all, what it really comes down to, give yourself the most chance and set yourself up for success. And more than likely, you'll get lucky.
Yeah, and we get it. Everyone wants to play it, and it's an amazing experience. And honestly, just going to the town is, I mean, it's jaded saying, but it's just as good as playing it, to be frank with everyone. But we're very transparent with groups as well, and we definitely, quote unquote, don't beat it around the bush. And if you've got a group of 8 people and you're having this itinerary where you're up in the Highlands and you're coming down through St. Andrews and you're like, we're going to ballot one day. I'm going to be very honest with the group captain and be like, if you're doing this in June, July, and August, your odds are very, very small in getting on. I really tell groups, what is the kind of the main reasoning of going? Is it to try to play the old course, or is it to play some other golf courses? And if it is to play some other golf courses, great. Then let's skip St. Andrews and let's do that on a different trip. But if the goal of this is trying to play the old course, then let's keep you in the St. Andrews area and play some of the other courses within the St. Andrews area and ballot you multiple days. Again, as DJ said, and what I've kind of said too, is balloting multiple days increases your odds. Maybe not so much for that PJ professional that balloted, 10 days in a row, but that definitely helps. I always tell groups too, the smaller your group size. So, if again, like I said, if it's a group of 8 or 12, that hurts. But if it's a group of like 4 or less, that helps. If you are going more towards off-peak time, so as DJ said, April and May is great, as well as October is fine. That's when I was thankfully able to get on and was batting 100% with that. I was able to get on my first try, and that was on late October. So that timing, as well as again balloting multiple days, that helps. And one of the biggest things too is to think about is if you are going to do that route of being in the St. Andrews area, is booking other golf within that area on those days. So, for example, we're going to ballot you on days that you also have a confirmed round, say at Crail Golfing Society. So again, as DJ said, you go through that ballot, you find out 2 days prior if you're playing or not. If you're not able to play, great. You already have a confirmed round at Crail, and go enjoy your round. And then we're going to ballot you on the next day. But for the latter, if you are successful in getting on, great. Obviously, you're going to play the old course rather than Crail, as much as I love Crail. But you're going to move that round of golf at Crail to an opposite day. And the third way is through the direct application. Essentially, this is a way of applying for a guaranteed time by yourself. So it's not so much through a golf tour operator as such as H&B, but this is kind of doing it on your own. So the direct application opens up in September, the year before of intended travel. So for example, this will open up in September of 2023 for play in 2024. And you're actually going to go online. I think you actually make a login and go online and actually apply for a tee time, give some of the dates that you believe you're going to be in the St. Andrews area, and then go on there and you apply for it again in September, and the results come out in October, usually the second or third week. Sometimes it varies, but that's when the results come out. And again, if you're successful, great. You have a guaranteed time. You have a time on the old course, and you're able to play one of the other Links Trust golf courses as well, which is fantastic. So, we go through groups and kind of give them the options or whatever that feels best for them. And again, their group size, what have you. But again, that's an additional way that the Links Trust opens up the course and is able to potentially book that. A lot of our groups have gone this way. And again, it's a nice way of having a guaranteed time and knowing you're playing it before you even leave to go across the pond.
Yeah, it's a great option. And like you said, I mean, we have several groups this year that, are playing the old course via the direct application. The thing to keep in mind is if you say, okay, I'm going to go the direct application route and you're not successful, and you then come back and say, okay, I would like to book a guaranteed tee time. Well, those results came out in October. And as we touched on earlier in the episode, our tee times are all gone in April. And that's going to kind of be across the board. That's not just an H&B thing. I think you would at that point be very hard pressed to find a guaranteed tee time. You might get lucky and find somebody that's got one like in April or something, but for the most part, those guaranteed tee times are going to be gone at that point. And so if you absolutely have to play the old, and you also definitely want to have a guaranteed slot before you depart the US, you need to kind of think through, well, maybe I need to go the guaranteed route because that's really the only quote unquote guarantee. But if you don't do a guaranteed time and you strike out on the ballot and you strike out on the direct application, all is still not lost because there is still the singles queue. Now, the singles queue, we're going to lead off right away and say is not for everyone. But it can be a very effective way to get on the old course. Think of it like flying standby. Basically, the tee sheet ends up with a handful of open spots each and every day, and those spots are essentially filled on a first come, first served basis. But what you've got to know is that the first come side of that equation happens like the night before. If you think about, if you've ever heard about how Bethpage Black, how everyone sleeps in their car, right? And it's a cool tradition or what have you. Well, take that, move it to Scotland, and have it be a bunch of people sleeping outside the old Pavilion clubhouse in the middle of the night, and it's cold and what have you. That's the singles queue. To kind of roughly give you the story, back in 2018, my brother and I are in St. Andrews. We strike out on the ballot and we decide we're going to do the singles queue. We get there at midnight, and that was good enough for 13 and 14th in line. Um, I played at 8 o'clock, or I'm sorry, he played at 8 o'clock. I played at about 5 p.m. So it worked. We got on. It was a long night, but it was also arguably one of the most memorable nights of my life. If you ever want an illustration of that St. Andrews is the home of golf, the place you will find it is at about 4 a.m. in the morning outside the old pavilion. By the end of the night, there were roughly, I'd say, 60 of us. Keep in mind, there were only about 15 or 20 slots for the next day. So again, do the math on that. But from all over the world, Singapore, Australia, there was a golf team from Nebraska that brought their bedding from the hotel room and passed around a bottle of vodka. I mean, I don't know how well that worked out for them, but they were first in line. They got there at 10 p.m. They were first in line. I think they just came straight from the Dunvegan and plopped down, but they got to play. So all of which is to say, the singles queue can work, but you've got to put in the work. Last year we had a member that, same thing. He wanted to play the old. He had struck out on the ballot. He got there at 10 p.m. and he was second in line. The other guy got there at 7 p.m. So it's this is why we say it's not for everyone. But at the same time, if you need to play the old, it works. The other thing to note is that singles queue, this may evolve over time. We're hearing that there may be some changes that come to it in terms of how it is implemented. It may go to an online based thing, but for now at least, if you want to play the old course, well, get up early, and what that mean by early, I mean the night before.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in St. Andrews in October, and I was having my nightcap at the Rustics Hotel, and I was at the 18th restaurant above. Go outside to their putting green, which is kind of cool outside. I'm looking out on the 18th, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people lining up, and I think it was. Yeah, I think it was somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m. It was around that time. So, it's kind of, you see the pictures, you see the videos of people lining up, but to see it in person is pretty cool. And to your point, DJ, you're right. That is the home of golf, and I was thankfully able to get onto the ballot with my good friend in October, and the two other gents that play with us. One, he wins through the singles queue, and he was originally from California but lives in Dubai now, and his wife actually walked with him, which was really cool. And then the other gent was from Connecticut. So you got people from all over the world that'll play there, and those are the two that filled our foursome, if you will. And those two went through the singles queue, so which is great. And I think kind of in summary, DJ, of kind of how this works is, when it comes to the old course, be early in booking and be flexible. And honestly, that goes for all four routes. You have to be that way. If you have a guaranteed route all the way to waiting in line at 7, 8, 9 p.m. at night the night before. So just be super flexible and start planning early for the trip. And for groups that are wanting a guaranteed times, that are hearing this right now and potentially going to try to go for 2024. I'll be honest, we're going to push you to 2025, just because the demand is so large still there. And again, we only get a very select number of these times each year. So we're going to probably more than likely move you to 2025. And just kind of timing to play just in general. April is a really good time. It's kind of coming in that spring season. It's more off-peak time. Balloting is great during that time. We do usually receive some guarantee times starting in April, which is great as well. So that's a good time. And as we said in past episodes, and we'll restate it now, September is a no-go for the old course. The RNA comes in and have their autumn meetings as well as some medal plays, and essentially the month is pretty much a red X through that month of people wanting to go during that time. It is a good time to go to Scotland in September, and as well as Ireland, but usually September is a no-go during that month, just because again 90-95% of the month is pretty much closed out. And then again, give yourself numerous times to ballot. Again, if you're a group of 8 or 12 and thinking you're just going to ballot in one day, I'm going to be very, very blunt and honest with you. It's more than likely not going to work out. But again, limit your group size, going off peak times, and being in the St. Andrews area multiple days to ballot. That increases your odds. Those 3 things is kind of best practices for playing the old course to the ballot. So that's what I leave everyone and kind of summarize what we talked about.
100%. And, to that, I would only add that, it really helps for you and your group to all be on the same page early on in terms of where does the old course, rank? What is our mindset toward it? If you are comfortable with going to Scotland, going to St. Andrews, and not playing the old course, if you could overcome that disappointment or what have you, then great. You're going to go, you're going to have a great time. There is so much great golf around St. Andrews, between Kingsbarns and Crail and Carnoustie and London Links and Dumbarton and Glen Eagles. I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on. You'll have a great time. If you strike out, it's not the worst thing. But at the same time, if you absolutely need to play the old course and wouldn't be able to stomach it, as far as coming home having not done so, then that's when you need to have the conversation of, okay, you know what, we need to probably go the guaranteed route to ensure that happens. But otherwise, this has been awesome. Connor, anything to add? I think we kind of touched everything that we wanted to hit there.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. This has been great. I think we've talked about all 4 different ways, and hopefully if anyone's been confused and trying to look online of kind of the different ways, hopefully you fell across this podcast and just gave some more clarity to how it all works and the different processes that go from each way. So again, hopefully this was a good guide for everyone, and look forward to helping everyone in the future on future expeditions to Scotland and more specifically St. Andrews.
Absolutely. Well, if we fell short somewhere in terms of clarifying things and you need some further information, check the show notes. We will have our complete written guide to Old Course tee times, as well as another one to the singles queue with some more information there. If you have any specific questions, you can DM us on social media or shoot us an email, goff@haversham.com. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back with you with another episode soon. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.